According to brand new polling, Donald Trump takes a huge lead in the critical swing state of Michigan. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video, and today we have to talk about the 2024 presidential election because it appears that Donald Trump is surging in Michigan. Yeah, that's right, we have brand new polling out of the critical swing state, and it is bad for Kamala Harris. Like, I am not exaggerating when I say this is like DEFCON 1 for Democrats in Michigan. It is that bad. Now, I want to be clear that I am not saying for sure that Trump is going to win Michigan by 15 points, or it's a foregone conclusion Trump's going to win. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But look at this. This is a brand new poll out of Michigan from Big Data, which, for those that don't know, this is the People's Pundit, aka Richard Bears. You know, one of the most accurate pollsters out there. And I know some people don't like him, but when you look at his history and his track record, he's pretty damn good. Well, he just dropped a Trump plus 3.5 out of Michigan. With leaners, it's just below Trump plus 4. Yeah, this is not a typo, this is not a misquote. Right now in the swing state of Michigan, it is currently Trump plus 3.5, with leaners just under Trump plus 4. This is in Michigan, not Ohio, not Iowa, not Florida, the state of Michigan. You know, of all the swing states back in 2020, it voted to the left of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania by a point or so. Yeah, this same state, it's going to Trump by quite a bit. I mean, we're not talking about a 1-point lead, because that's one thing. Like, okay, if this was Trump plus 1, if this was Trump plus 2, whatever it is, that's one thing. You could say that's a margin of error, that's statistical noise, fine. The problem is, well, this is not a Trump plus 1. This is not even a Trump plus 2. This is Trump plus 3.5. And that's a very good poll for Trump, especially from Big Data. And I know people don't like him, but like I said, Richard Bears has a great track record. For crying out loud, back in 2020, his final poll out of Michigan was like Biden plus 2. At the end of the day, he won it by just under 3. That's a damn good poll out of Michigan. So when he drops a Trump plus 3.5, this isn't like Rasmussen, this isn't like Trafalgar, where some people might claim they have a Republican bias. This is Richard Bears, who outside of 2022 has been a really good pollster. Now again, 2022, there were some misses here and there, but when you look at his other years, like 2020, 2021, 2018, 2016, he's been fairly accurate. So when he drops a Trump plus 3.5, you cannot just say, well, it's Richard Bears. That means it's a bad poll. Bullshit. Especially when you look at the other polls that were just released since September 20th. Look at this. Rasmussen, a tied race. Atlas Intel, one of, if not the best pollsters in America, Trump plus 4. Trafalgar, Trump plus 2. National Research, the only poll of these polls to have Harris winning. Harris plus 3. Insider Advantage, another good pollster. Trump plus 2. Big Data, Trump plus 2. But of course, it ended up being Trump plus 3.5. And even Fabrizio and Impact Research, they found it Trump plus 1. So it's not just Richard Bears saying, oh, it's Trump plus 3, but everyone else is claiming it's actually Harris plus 5. No. There's only been one pollster in the last couple of weeks to even have Harris winning. Of course, decent pollsters, not Bloomberg, not some shit pollster like that. I'm talking about decent pollsters like Atlas Intel, like Trafalgar, like Big Data. They all are showing virtually the same thing. Trump is winning. And not just by a point, it's like Trump plus 2, Trump plus 3, Trump plus 4. I mean, for crying out loud, the clear outlier is National Research, which found Harris plus 3. Everyone else except Rasmussen, funny enough, they have Trump winning by at least 1 to upwards of 4 points. So who do you trust more? Do you trust Big Data and Atlas Intel, or do you trust Bloomberg? I'm going to say, yeah, I trust Big Data, I trust Atlas Intel, because guess what? They have good track records, especially in Michigan. So the fact is, they have Trump winning by 2 to 4 points in the swing state. I mean, that's a big deal because, like I said, of the Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, this one voted to the left of all of them. So the fact that Trump is not just barely losing Michigan, no, he's outright winning Michigan. What do you think's happening in Wisconsin? What do you think's happening in Pennsylvania? Do you really think that Trump is up by 3.5 to 4 points in Michigan but losing Pennsylvania? Really? Listen, if it was a Trump +1, that's one thing. That's statistical noise. Maybe something crazy happens in Michigan. But it's Trump +4. We're not talking about a small 1-point lead that could change tomorrow. No. It's Trump +3 to Trump +4, and he's at 48 to 49% of the vote. I mean, what does that tell you? It tells you that right now, Trump is in a great position to win Michigan. And like I said, they're not the only pollster. Big Data, Rasmussen, Atlas Intel, they're all showing virtually the same thing. Trump is the favorite in Michigan. And if he's winning Michigan, more than likely, he's winning Pennsylvania, he's winning Wisconsin. You look at the electoral map, if Trump wins Michigan, well, at that point, he just needs Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona. That's it, or even Nevada. That's all he needs to win the presidency. But like I said, if he's really winning Michigan, like this poll is showing by 4 points, in what universe does Trump win Michigan, but by some miracle lose Wisconsin or even Pennsylvania? Do you really think, or even states like Arizona, do you really think that Trump would do 5 points better in Michigan? And I know there is a big X factor in the state we'll get to in a second, but do you really think Trump would do that much worse in Wisconsin, but that much better in Michigan? I highly doubt it. So at the end of the day, he's for sure winning Michigan by 4. I should say that's what the poll is showing. At that point, he's pretty much a guarantee to win Wisconsin, pretty much a guarantee to win Pennsylvania. At that point, he doesn't even need Arizona. Hell, he doesn't even need Georgia. He just needs North Carolina, and well, he's the next president. That's why it's a big deal. It's not like a Trump +1 where you can just ignore it and say, well, yeah, it's Trump +1, but it's from Big Data, you know, a far-right pollster. He's not. And it's only a 1-point lead. That could change next week. This is Trump +3.5. And this is from a good pollster that you have to trust. You cannot just say they're a shitty pollster. They're not. Richard Barris is a good pollster. He knows what he's doing, especially in the Rust Belt. Go back to his 2016 and 2020 polling. He was spot on. The only real miss in 2020 was like he had Trump +1 in Pennsylvania, which is a 2-point miss. Who cares? In Michigan, he was off by like 0.5%. That's nothing. He's a good pollster, especially in the Rust Belt. So when he drops a Trump +3 or Trump +4, you better listen, because there's a good chance it could end up being Trump +4. Now, is that a guarantee it ends up being Trump +4? No. It could things could change where Harris wins a bunch of undecideds and maybe the poll's off by a little bit. Fine, but do you really think there's going to be a 4-point miss here? Especially when every other halfway decent pollster has a Trump lead? Do you really think that's going to happen? I don't think so. The fact is, the only pollsters that have this huge lead for Harris are the Bloombergs of the world, which I've said many times before. They're a shitty pollster. They have no clue what the hell they're doing, and they shit out garbage polls every cycle. They're the only pollster you can look at and say, oh, that's a huge Harris lead. That's it. Everyone else is showing Trump +2, Trump +3, Trump +4. These are big leads. Now, some of you might be asking yourselves, well, oh, okay, how could Trump be doing so good in Michigan? After all, back in 2020, it was the most Democrat-leaning state of the Rust Belt states. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it leaned most to the left. So how the hell could Trump be doing so good here? All right, because it's a big deal for Trump to win Michigan by 4. Because like I said, if you're winning Michigan, you're up in Wisconsin, you're up in Pennsylvania, you're sweeping the Rust Belt. There's no other way to put it. You're going to sweep the Rust Belt if you're winning Michigan. But I could see a scenario play out where, by some miracle, Michigan could vote to the right of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. And I know that sounds crazy because, well, look at the results. This was Biden +3. Compare that to Wisconsin, which was Biden +0.5. Pennsylvania was Biden +1. So it sounds crazy to say maybe Michigan votes to the right of all 3 of the states. And I'm not saying like a 5-point difference between Wisconsin and Michigan. I'm talking like maybe a 1-point gap. So that means if Trump wins Michigan by 3 or 2, he's probably winning Wisconsin by 1 or 2. Something like that. I'm not saying a 5-point difference. That's not going to happen. but I could see a scenario play out where he can do the best, not in Pennsylvania, not in Wisconsin, but in Michigan. And I know that sounds crazy because when you look at the voting habits of these three states, you have to go way back to find a time where Michigan was the most Republican of the three. I know it's very unlikely, but the reason I say it's possible is, well, look at the demographics of Michigan. They have a high concentration of union voters. That's a fact. I mean, there's a lot of auto workers in Michigan, and Harris is doing awful with them. I don't care what unions endorse her. The people that actually work, they are not supporting Harris at all. We saw the surveys from Teamsters. They outright said Trump is getting like 60 to 70% of the Teamsters support, right? That's what they admitted to. So the union vote is a complete disaster, and that's a big deal in Michigan, especially with the auto workers. You could argue that that's the reason why Biden was able to flip Michigan. He was able to do just good enough with those auto workers to barely squeak by. Do you really think Kamala Harris has the same appeal as Joe does with these people? You cannot convince me that that's the case. It's not going to happen. There's no way you could tell me that, yeah, Kamala Harris has the same appeal as Joe does with union voters. No, she doesn't. Biden had a unique appeal because he grifted off being the Scranton Joe. That's a fact. What does Harris have? She has nothing. She has no appeal to these voters at all. Plus, we've seen some big studies from the Teamsters Union, for example, and they outright admit that, yeah, like 70% of our own people, they are supporting Trump. That's what they're admitting. Even CNN, they had a bunch of studies. They're showing Harris is getting historically low numbers with union voters. That's a big problem, especially in Michigan. That's a huge ordeal. But fine, okay, the union vote, it might shift Republican, but it might not be enough to explain why Trump is doing so good in Michigan, because a Trump +4, that's a 7-point swing from 2020. And the union vote, yeah, they're a decent share of the vote in Michigan. Trump would have to be doing like 20 to 30 points better just with union voters, just to maybe account for a 5-point shift. So you can't just say, well, maybe just union voters shifting Democrat, or I should say Republican. That's part of it. I think that's a big reason why Trump is doing so much better here, but it doesn't really explain why Trump is doing 5 to 10 points better in Michigan, especially compared to Wisconsin or even Pennsylvania. I would argue that the main reason why Trump is doing so much better in Michigan, possibly compared to Wisconsin, is the fact that the war in Israel is having a much bigger impact for Democrats in Michigan compared to, say, Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. I really believe that's the number one reason why Trump is doing way better in Michigan, especially compared to Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. For those that don't know, Michigan has a very large Muslim American community. All right, it's like 3% of the population, I believe. And of course, they have cities like Hamtramck, Michigan, Dearborn, very Muslim cities. In fact, Hamtramck, Michigan is one of the only cities in America that's majority Muslim. Well, guess what? They're not happy with the Biden administration at all. They feel like they have gotten screwed during this whole ordeal. And now some of them, they're openly backing Trump. For crying out loud. The mayor of Hamtramck, Michigan, who's a Democrat, by the way, who's also an Arab American, is backing Trump. Yeah, he's endorsing Trump for president. And he's outright saying, hey, we may disagree with Trump on a lot of stuff, but we know what we're getting with Trump. We know for a fact that we're going to get peace in the Middle East, no more wars, it's going to be peaceful, it'd be much more stable than what's happening right now. With Kamala Harris, God knows what you're getting. You have no clue what you're actually getting with Harris. And that's why I really believe there's a possibility that Michigan could vote to the right of Wisconsin, of Pennsylvania. Is it likely? Maybe not, but it does make sense. Demographically speaking, Harris has a big problem in Michigan. You have a lot of union voters shifting towards Trump. You have Muslim American voters shifting away from Harris, not towards Trump necessarily, but just not voting or voting like Jill Stein. You have a bunch of progressive young voters at the University of Michigan not supporting Harris. It keeps going on and on. Plus, you have a lot of black voters shifting towards Trump. A lot of Catholics in Michigan, they're voting for Trump. Nearly every core demographic in Michigan, they're shifting towards Trump. They're not shifting towards Harris. They're nearly universally all swinging towards Trump. That's the number one reason why I think Harris is in deep trouble here. She may not lose by 4 points, but there's not a single demographic that is critical in Michigan that's actually shifting towards her. Not a single one. Because you have protest votes with Muslim voters, with young voters. You're doing worse with African Americans, doing worse with union voters, with Catholics, with nearly every demographic. There are no positives here at all. We just got to see what happens. Maybe it's a fluke. Maybe every other pollster, not just Rich Barris, but everyone, including Trafalgar, Insider Advantage, Atlas Intel, maybe they're all wrong. But I highly doubt that they're going to be off by 3 to 4 points. They might be off by 1 to 2. Fine, that's one thing, but a 4-point miss? If you're banking on a 4-point miss in favor of Harris, not even towards Trump, which would actually make sense because it happened 2 times in a row, but for it to happen towards Harris, a 4-point miss? That is so unlikely. I just don't see how it's possible. I guess it is possible, but it's so unlikely that I don't think it's going to happen. Could it? I guess, but will it? Probably not. We will see what happens, but right now, Harris is in deep trouble in Michigan. And if that's the case, her pathway to the presidency is all but gone. Because if we assume Trump's winning North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona, well, Michigan gets him over the top. He can lose everything else, and it's very unlikely, but he can afford to lose every other swing state, and it would still be enough for him to win. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks, but right now, Harris is in deep trouble. She's in deep trouble in Michigan. If she loses that state, it's all but over. This election's all but done if she loses Michigan. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.